What is up, guys? Welcome to Truth and Transparency's Friday night feature. We're taking us back to Idaho. Who really killed Brian Drake? Are we talking about a murder for hire? Are we talking about corruption? Are we talking about incompetency on the Idaho State Police? Or is it a multiple things and it created the perfect storm? Tonight I'm going to reveal new, never seen, never heard, never seen videos, photos, timelines and investigations, reports, police reports. But tonight I am releasing the first bombshell, which is the very first suspect in the Dr. Drake, Dr. Moore case. Was a man out of Michigan. His name was Stephen Hartman. Well, Stephen Hartman, he was detained the day after the shooting, and he had all of his clothing taken, tons of pieces of clothing from his hotel room, and those were eventually taken to a lab and tested for GSR, it's like gunpowder residue. And would you guys believe it? But guess what I have right here today with me? I have the results of the testing on his clothing. And would you believe it? You would think that this should come back negative because he was ruled out. But it wasn't negative. In fact, there's 3 particles that make up GSR, and he tested positive for having 2 out of those 3 particles within and on his clothing. But guess what else he also had at his hotel room? He had multiple cell phones. He said he was texting during the time of the murder when he was walking. I didn't find that, but he had women's underwear, 1 pair of purple women's underwear. He was a solo guy. Steve Hartman, we'll talk about him. This was the first suspect. But welcome to the transparency. We're going to rewind some stuff. We're going to make sure that you know about the case. Here we go. Brian Drake would be murdered within 1 hour from the timestamp of this video taken by Aldora. This was in his office, where he would just be murdered literally within minutes, within an hour. There is Dr. Brian Drake right there. What? You heard Aldora. She was even shocked when she sees Brian. He's in a leg brace. Brian Drake had 4 cell phones in his possession. 4. Only 2 were extracted and uploaded to the defense. break his leg not even a month before his murder. Again, welcome to Truth and Transparency. Brian Drake. Who really killed Brian Drake? I found this case due to my work with the Idaho 4 case. The same investigators, Idaho State Police, took over Brian Drake's murder in 2020. Then you would fast forward to 2022 when the senseless 4 students being stabbed on campus at Idaho, University of Idaho. I started to look into that case, and it was because of my work with the Idaho 4 case that I actually found Brian Drake through none other than Gary Tolson, one of the investigators. His name was mentioned by Ann Taylor in one of the motions, and that's how I found this story, which is literally, it has it all. It has the church. Heart of the City Church out of Coeur d'Alene is where Brian Drake, a chiropractor, he started up his chiropractic career in Austin, Texas. He was there up until 2012 when he was getting too touchy-feely with his patients, coworkers. He had I want to use my dick problem all the time. That's who Brian Drake is. And his wife knew all about it, but she acted like she didn't. And that would be none other than Jennifer Drake. Now, Jennifer Drake, I know you're going to be watching this at some point. And like I've been saying, I hope that you have an amazing criminal defense attorney on speed dial. Brian and Jennifer they have 4 children, all under the age of 16 at the time of Brian Drake's murder. One of his children did have their license, 16 years old, and drove a Honda Civic. But we'll get into a little bit more about their vehicles down the road. But this is a rewind here. Brian lived in Coeur d'Alene / Hayden, and that would be about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes from Bonners Ferry. And then in between, Bonners Ferry is about 30 minutes from Canada. And then in between where Bonners Ferry is located and Hayden / Coeur d'Alene is a place called Sandpoint, really nice area. And that's about 45 minutes, 40 minutes from Coeur d'Alene. So it's kind of like in the middle. It breaks up the drive from CDA, Sandpoint, and then Bonners Ferry. Well, Brian, like I said, he had a little bit of an issue. He was a womanizer. He was an alcoholic, and he liked pain pills and steroids. I was able to find, due to my investigation and going through a gazillion text messages, I was able to find Brian Drake's steroid dealer and pain pill provider. Yes. And Brian just isn't smart man. I mean, maybe he might be book smart. He could be a chiropractor and all. But Brian Drake actually wrote down on his patient care files, he thought that he should note when he is trading off his services for helping people with their backs on when he's intaking pills and bottles of pills from people. So this was something that Brian dabbled in his whole entire life. Jennifer Drake, though, his wife, will act like she has no idea what we're talking about, and that her husband is not a giant perv, but Brian is a huge tits and ass man. So much so that during the interview, or not the interview process, but during investigating by the Idaho State Police, they came across women that told them flat out that Brian has asked them things like, will you give me a blowjob? My balls are sore. Will you rub them tonight? We'll get into that as well. But I think Brian is somebody that I would have been friends with. Now, Jennifer Drake, not so much. She's the one that you need to watch out for. But Brian was miserable as fuck. Brian was depressed as fuck. Brian, on Mondays and Thursdays, he would see patients in Bonners Ferry. He would drive in the morning at 6 o'clock a.m. and get on over to Bonners Ferry around anywhere between, sometimes he would even before 6 o'clock. He literally wanted to get the hell up out of that house and get on the road. But he would see patients probably around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning until about 6 p.m. In the middle of his day, though, he would have a huge gap, like not just like 1 hour for lunch, but anywhere between 1 to 3 hour gap. Then Brian wouldn't get in his car when he was done with work. In fact, he would then spend the night in his office on the same couch that all of his patients would sit on and wait for him. He had a pull-out couch. He had a bad back, a bad leg, and he literally stayed on a pull-out couch Mondays and Thursday nights in Bonners Ferry. He would be murdered on a Thursday when he was supposed to be staying that night in Bonners Ferry. He would see patients Mondays and Thursdays in Bonners Ferry, Tuesdays in Sandpoint. Wednesdays, he liked to say that he saw patients in Hayden, but he had hardly any patients where he lived because he would shit where he ate. And Fridays, he barely would see anybody. Now, Jennifer Drake, and the story that law enforcement will tell everybody is that Brian Drake was so successful and he saw so many patients and he was making so much money. However, Brian's taxes, as well as Brian's scheduling, would show something completely different. Brian Drake lived basically patient to patient. But Brian was the sole breadwinner of the family. So much so that his wife has never had a career. She would just spend his money, number one, or get herself into odd scams, okay, or do things to hide making money, even from her own husband. Now, Leanna, how do you know all of this? Well, because Jennifer Drake asked for the discovery, and Jennifer Drake was provided the criminal discovery. Idaho State Police handed the widow of Brian Drake, who had received $1 million after his murder, within 3 weeks. She was never ruled out. Shit, she was never even considered a suspect. Now, that's just straight trifling. We're going to get into that now. Again, so Brian, Bonners Ferry, Sandpoint, and Hayden. That's what you need to remember. Those were his 3 locations were. Brian Drake had a problem where past people that he worked for, he did not have good relationships. They would fizzle out because he would steal patients. He would steal patients. Now, isn't that ironic that people said that he was murdered, such as the police saying that Brian was murdered due to a doctor being jealous over Brian taking his patients and his career? And that doctor would be Dr. Moore. And we're going to get into that. But Dr. Moore actually had the successful practice. Dr. Moore had lived in Bonners Ferry for a very, very long time, raised his family there, knew everybody in town, and Dr. Moore saw triple the number of patients per day that Dr. Drake would see. Not only did Dr. Moore make a living being a chiropractor, Dr. Moore had a ton of properties that he had, as whether he owned an apartment building, so he was a landlord there, but he made money off of real estate. Okay. Very, very successful man. Very, very hard worker. That wasn't the case for the Drakes. The Drakes never had money. In fact, the Drakes would scam money. Brian Drake, in fact, was out of work for weeks upon weeks before his death due to somebody bashing his leg in on February 4th of 2020. He'd be murdered on March 12th, 2020. But Brian Drake told everybody, and so did Jennifer Drake, that he slipped and fell and broke his leg in 3 places. However, his family didn't even believe him. In fact, some members of his family are doctors, and they said, you cannot break your leg in a twisting fracture like that. That is something being crushed onto your leg. Now, I went ahead and found out that the day before his leg just shattered in 3 places, he deleted a text message from a patient that had reached out to him 2 years prior to. Well, it comes to find out that the name associated with the person that actually saw Brian Drake then, the day of his accident, I traced it all back to Chicago ties with the mafia. So take that for you. Anyways, who's Brian Drake and what was Brian Drake into? The police came across 4 cell phones in the possession of Brian Drake. How many do you think they turned over to the defense? 2. Then they kind of hid in the other 2. Still never extracted to this day. Motive, well, they think that one doctor killed another doctor because of patience. Not true. So we'll get into the real motive. Again, who is Brian Drake? He's a chiropractor, he's a husband, a dad. He was a churchgoer, hiding behind our faith. He was a friend to people, but again, remember, he was an alcoholic, a pain pill addiction, steroid user, porn addiction, and his wife wouldn't let him have Google. She wouldn't let him be able to get on the internet, and then she strapped him down with a Life 360 app. But Brian Drake figured out a way to disable his Life 360 app when he was in Bonners Ferry, so Jennifer would not be able to keep tabs on him. Now, now you have to ask yourselves, when Brian Drake was murdered, can you believe it that he was on the phone with his wife? Allegedly, they were on the phone from 7:17 until 7:26 p.m. on March 12th, 2020. It would then be said by Jennifer Drake that Brian said, "Oh my gosh, ouch, I think somebody just shot me through the window." And then boom, poof, the phone just goes black. Then Jennifer decides to call 911 but wait, there's something missing here. Oh, wait, that's right. Her cell phone that she says she called 911 on has no record of her ever calling 911. Like literally even when her phone was extracted. The cell right came back, never calling 911. Or at least Jennifer McCabe, she called 911, deleted it, but we were able to get that back. No. This broad, Jennifer Drake, says that she used her cell phone to make a 911 call. It's not there. Not only is it not there, but then I went one step further and I did a FOIA request to see if I could see if the Kootenai County Dispatch actually had records of the 911 call. Guess what? No. They said nobody by the name of Jennifer Drake or her friend Amber Van Ling, because I went that far to say, maybe they used her cell phone and maybe it was a mix-up. No. There is no record of any 911 being dispatched or patched through from her home county in Hayden, which is Kootenai County Dispatch. But I have 2 copies of 2 911 calls because they were being patched through, right? But guess what? There is no chain of custody on these 911 calls. Do you know that you have to go and get 911 calls from dispatch? And there's actually like, you'd put it in a report, who you met with, who you got the disc from, when you got it, and then you'd put it in evidence. Well, guess what? There's no chain of custody on any of the 911 calls. Yeah, the Idaho State Police is going to have to answer that here in about 6 months. Next up, do you guys know what CAD notes are? Well, I wanted to investigate this whole alleged, because there wasn't just one 911 caller, there was actually 2 911 callers. Somebody said that they heard gunshots and saw somebody running from the side of the building, and it looked off. And so a 19-year-old by the name of Isaac Funderburg called 911 at 7:29 p.m. allegedly, which actually made it first through dispatch before actually Jennifer Drake's got patched 3 times, and then hers came through. And this 911 call from Isaac Funderburg, who is an eyewitness, he gave an eyewitness statement that said that this guy that he saw running looked like a Middle Eastern man, 5'8", facial hair, a beanie, and all black with a silver vest. Guess who that fits the description of? None other than Brian Drake's last patient, Caleb Kakoa Nazara, who was Aldora Gatchell's brother who was in from Hawaii. Now you're just like, whoa. He wasn't even Dr. Drake's patient, but yet he supposedly got adjusted by Dr. Drake. There's no report of that. He's not on his patient list for that day, and there was no new patient form filled out. Aldora's brother is the one you can hear playing the ukulele in the background, and it is a death song that he is playing. Crazy, right? Well, I got my hands on all 18 surveillance cameras that were taken from the area, but there are 2 that are actually missing that are very, very important. But the Idaho State Police said that they either just didn't go and get it or that they didn't exist. One would be the coffee shop next door to where Brian Drake's office was. Well, I actually talked and interviewed to all the people that worked there at the time, and they most certainly had cameras, and they most certainly recorded, and they worked. And would you believe it that those people still had their 2020 phones available for me? Wow, I'm just really scoring. Woo! Then the other place was the Super One grocery store. Now, Leslie Layman, Rich Alderson, and the rest of the crew of Idaho State Police, they were supposed to go canvass the area and get all the necessary documents and video surveillance available. Now, don't you think that you would go to the grocery store that everybody and their mother said that they went to that day? I mean, that's just kind of like fucking, I don't know, like a 4th grader could do that shit, right? Well, guess what? Why would Idaho State Police not go and obtain the grocery store Super One cameras? That would literally show when Isaac Funderburg said he went there after he called 911. That would show when Aldora Gatchell got there when she said that she left her last appointment and went to the grocery store before she went back home. Literally everybody and their mother went to this Super One grocery store that day and it had mentioned it in their interviews. But these cops just don't go and get. It's very similar to what they did in the Brian Kohlberger case when they didn't go and obtain cameras that you guys are hearing about now. Leslie Layman, same person that did in the Brian Kohlberger case. Leslie Layman became a Idaho State Police detective in 2018. So she's freshly new, first murder case right here. Can't wait to just rip her all the way to shreds. What you are seeing in my hands is the CAD notes, the official CAD notes from that day. Well, what you will see is that it has never been seen ever where you have the CAD notes and they are all digital numbers on the timestamps of things that are going on. And these CAD notes, these official CAD notes, they are out of order time-wise. So much so that I asked numerous police officers, one who is a very, very good investigator, if he's ever come across something like this in his life. And he said, no, but there would have to be a really good reason to this. And even once they give us the reason, we're going to have to look into this supposed reason. So the CAD notes are all out of order time-wise. Like it starts at 1934 hours, then it goes to 1938, then it goes back down to 1936, then back to 1938 hours, then it goes from 20 flat, 2006, 2002, 2012, 2020, 2014. It's legit not in chronological sequential order. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Well, someone's going to have to answer that. Why are the CAD notes important? Well, because what I found in the CAD notes is that these officers are wearing body cams and they were supposedly supposed to be going to the address that was listed, and none of them go to the address that's listed. And in fact, they don't wear their body cams, and then Brian Drake all of a sudden gets a phone call at 7:44 p.m. Or I'm sorry, at 7:48 and 7:49 p.m. And there are officers that I believe are trying to call his cell phone. How would they know his number? Well, because Jennifer Drake received a call at 7:44 from the Boundary County Sheriff's Department. why the hell would the Boundary County Sheriff's Department be calling Jennifer Drake at 7:44? She just had called them with a 911 call, right? Well, Jennifer Drake would be interviewed. And in her interview, she said, well, yeah, they called me telling me that the medics were with him and that they were looking for his cell phone and I have his number and can I give them the number because they're trying to find his cell phone. And they're trying to find his number. She's like, it didn't make any sense, but they were saying that the medics were with him. Well, I have the body cams that prove that the medics were not with Brian Drake until well after 8:07 p.m. So at 7:44, we're going to try to find out who was the person that called Jennifer Drake, because it is in her phone records. She received a call from Boundary County Sheriffs, and it could actually be a call from someone's cell phone as well. It could come up that way. We'll get into that later. But when Isaac Funderburg called 911, he just simply said he had heard gunshots in the area. Okay. And then he tried to drive around to try to find this guy that was running, but couldn't find him. And then after he called 911, then he went to the store, Super One. But Jennifer Drake, let's talk about her 911 call. Jennifer Drake says that her husband was on the phone with her and that he says to her, oh my gosh, ouch, ouch. I think I was shot through the window. Someone just shot me through the window. Well, I've been on this case for a year. So rewind. I brought none other than crime scene expert, reenactment specialist, evidence specialist, one of the best in the world, Scott Roeder, on this case. Got Scott Roeder everything that he would need to do none other than a reenactment of a shot going through a window. Because when I got my hands on all the photos, I said, there's no way that this shot was coming outside from outside in. I believe that this shot was from inside out, which means Brian Drake couldn't have been shot with this shot because it was a quote unquote, it was to stage the scene. I didn't believe that the shot through the window was the shot that killed him. Okay. Lo and behold, I'd be right. So, wait, what are you saying there, Lana? I'm saying exactly this. The shot through the window it's scientifically proven that it came inside, not outside. Wait, but Brian Drake was inside. So wait, if he wasn't shot through the window, where was he shot? He was shot outside in the back of his office. And that's why his autopsy has a bunch of dirt on the back of his sweater. He has dirt underneath his fingernails. And the back of the office is disheveled to the point that there is a shed that has a door hinging off. So wait, what do you mean, Brian? You're saying he wasn't shot through the window? Exactly. So how would Jennifer Drake know that even a shot was taken out for the window? Who came up with this again? Oh, wait, Jennifer Drake. Jennifer Drake said on her 911 call that her husband said, oh my God, ouch, ouch, I think I had just been shot through the window. But he wasn't shot through the window. So that would mean that Jennifer Drake knew that the window was shut out. And that was the ruse, and she knew it, and therefore she needed to say that to the authorities. Because honestly, how would Jennifer Drake know that the window was even shot out? Because Brian Drake would never tell somebody he was shot through the window if he wasn't shot through the window. In fact, Brian Drake would be standing in front of the person that actually shot him. And so then we get to the investigation part. Do you know that this was never investigated? Meaning Jennifer Drake just tells you this story and you don't think to say to yourself, well, let's go and prove that any of this is possible. This is how the Idaho State Police said that this is possible. Brian Drake had a phone call on his phone from 7:17 until 7:26. Jennifer Drake had a phone call on her phone from 7:17 until 7:26. Both of the phones were communicating with each other. Well, God, you could have fooled me, but just because my phone is on does not mean that I'm on the other end of it. How about that? Also, they never checked when they just said Jennifer Drake was in Hayden when that phone call was made. Well, how do we know that? How do we know that? We don't know that. And in fact, they've never proven that. And in fact, now we have a 911 call that cannot be traced back to her cell phone as of today, this date, and we are 6 months out of trial. Who found all of this shit out? You're looking at her. The shit I have is, woo, it's tits. Oh, thank you. Now you're wondering, Lana, why are you announcing this? Because I fucking want to. I've been announcing it for a whole year. But why would you announce this to tip off Jennifer? Jennifer's already toast. Jennifer's already made her statements. What, Jennifer's going to go back on the fact that her husband didn't say that he was shot through the window? Do you guys know that the Idaho State Police literally went to a preliminary hearing with no measurements of this window? Do you know that the window was never taken into evidence? Do you know that the stool that he was supposedly sitting on wasn't taken into evidence? Do you know that there was no glass around Brian Drake's body that would have just blown out, supposedly got all over him, and knocked him off of his stool where he was found dead laying there? Why is his stool all covered with shards? If he was sitting on his stool when he would have gotten shot, there would not be the reminiscence of shards blowing through. Now, I just, woo. Do you know that when these guys went ahead and did their measurements of the window to say that Brian Drake was sitting at his last patients just had left, and that Brian Drake was sitting at his office, in his office right there, and sitting at his desk, he was leaned forward, and that somebody just came by his office window and shot from the blinds were closed, and shot through the blinds and hit him to the point that he actually internally bled out and died. Well, there's only one problem. The autopsy that was performed on good old Brian. Dr. Sally Aiken has a completely different the trajectory of the bullet is completely opposite of what the Idaho State Police have in their theory. Wouldn't you, as a police officer, I don't know, check with the good old doctor when you see her report come back and it says that that Brian Drake, the bullet traveled through his body at an upward angle? And do you know that in the police report that Van Leuven wrote up, he says that Brian Drake was shot and he was leaning over, and that the way that the bullet came through, that it was a downward angle. Well, you can say whatever you want in a police report, but that's going to get literally blown the fuck up in trial, in court, when your ME is saying that that's not what happened at all, because here's the autopsy, here's all the measurements, and Brian Drake was not shot at a downward angle through his body. It was at an upward angle through his body. But can you believe that they went to court with a preliminary hearing, didn't call the ME at this preliminary hearing, and had Van Leuven testify that, oh yeah, I don't have any of the measurements with me, but yeah, we believe that he was leaned over. He was talking to his wife. He was sitting at his desk. He was on the stool and he was leaned over. And then when the person came by, they walked by and they shot through it, and it was at a downward angle. And there's pictures of it, so you can go take a look. Pictures of what? Oh, you guys holding a rod, not on a tripod. The stuff that I'm about to show you guys, you're going to be like, this is Karen Reed 2.0 all over again. You guys thought solo red cups and leaf blowers were like, wow, this is crazy, right? Then you get to Idaho, Brian Drake, Dr. Moore case, and they just didn't take shit into evidence. And when they took pictures, they were just holding they were holding rods that are supposed to be on a tripod, and you're supposed to take then pictures of rulers, and they did Pharaoh scans. They just didn't do it right. They didn't back up far enough to see like how tall the window measured. And well, thank God I went to Idaho and I measured everything. And I just literally would look through this stuff and I'm like, this is Karen Reed 2.0. Like, wow. So we have to get to the whole point of what's the motive? Lana, if you say that the motive, okay, Dr. Moore's not the killer. I know Dr. Moore's not the killer. But my second bombshell tonight is, this is the first time I'll be saying this. I spent, during the course of the Karen Reed case, in the evenings, I spent anywhere between, I don't know, 4 and 6 hours. And then I'd get up and do the Karen Reed case. And I was gathering all my findings because I was really looking into what was truly visible on all of these surveillance cameras. And what's truly visible on all these surveillance cameras is that Dr. Moore was 100% framed. Dr. Moore was 100% framed. Like, they had all of the evidence points to that Dr. Moore was going to be the person that this ended up being pinned on, I guess you could say. How do you know that, Lana? Because they didn't follow a single lead when a lead would come up. Like, I don't know, an eyewitness saying and giving the exact description of Caleb Koko-Nazara as the person that's running behind the building after hearing the gunshots. How could anybody give a description of looks like a little Indian man, a Middle Eastern man, who is 5'8", has a like facial hair here, a beanie on, okay, black, but then a gray vest. That's exactly what he was wearing. That's exactly what he looks like. And how would Isaac Funderburg ever be able to give that description if, in fact, he never saw that man? You're not able to give the clothing down to the vest that he had on if you didn't see him. Well, I wanted to, because the way that they're trying to make this timeline is that this all happened. Brian Drake was shot through the window at 7:26 because that's when the wife says that, oh my God, the phone went dead. Well, what about all the eyewitnesses that say that the gunshot was at 7 o'clock, 7:05, 6:55? What about the eyewitnesses right there? And then everyone's like, well, that can't be because how could Brian Drake make a phone call? Well, Brian Drake didn't make the call, you fucking morons. And in fact, Brian Drake's phone makes the call to Jennifer's phone right as Aldora Gatchell and her brother are leaving. So all you would have to do is press send on his phone. Hey, it's done. We're leaving. Wait, let us get to the grocery store and, blah, 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 blah. Like, we already have what we're going to be saying, right? So just because one phone calls another phone does not mean that Brian Drake was on the other line of that. But that's how Idaho State Police, that's how they work. Now, how do you know this, Lana? How do you know that? Who are these eyewitnesses that said they heard the gunshot way before? Well, it's actually on surveillance camera. That's what I was spending all the past 2 months doing. And I am able to see Isaac's car driving across like he says he did. But it didn't happen at 7:28. Okay. Isaac went across at 6:55 and at 7:16. 6:55, 7:16. Isaac and his girlfriend said they heard 2 shots, not one. It'd be the shot that actually killed him, and then it would be the blowout window as the second one. And the blowout window was at the very end to stage the scene. And it's also proven scientifically through Scott Roeder, who I brought on, to say, I want to go buy 3 of these windows, and I want to blow these windows out with the blinds, the right height, and inside out, outside in, and I want to see what they look like, and I want to compare them. And if I'm right, would you testify? Would you be an expert witness? I was right. Holes, when you shoot through anything, the entry wound is going to be smaller and tighter, and then the exit wound is going to be bigger and exploding. Okay. And when you see the window of this crime scene, the tight hole is on the inside of the window, not from the outside. And so, like, that in and of itself, a police officer that has any experience should have been able to see that alone and saw that something was wrong. That's what tipped me off from it. Also, what would look like when you, I'll just let Scott explain it one day when you guys see it. So then going back to the time of the crime, this is all about the timeline of the crime because it's really, really important. Because if what the state says that they have is that Dr. Moore's truck was driving all over the area and circling, like he was casing the place and what have you. But what actually was happening is that whenever that's going on, it's already happened. Okay. And how can we prove this? We can prove this off of the surveillance cameras. I found, not only do I have Isaac Funderburg's car going across way earlier, I also have Aldora Gatchell's car leaving. I found it. I found it on an angle from the Columbia Bank camera on camera number 2. There's 18 businesses, but they all had multiple cameras. So I had to go through all these cameras. And it would be the Columbia Bank camera that I found the angle where I could actually see with headlights in the back of Dr. Drake's office. So I can see Aldora Gatchell's car start up. I can see her do exactly what she says. She backs on out, and then she pulls forward, and then she comes out, and then she makes a left, just like she says in her interviews. Okay. And she crosses over. So basically, Aldora's brother and her have to be in the vehicle, which means that Isaac couldn't have seen to give this type of a description anytime after, like, they were trying to say that he gave the description at like 7:27, 7:26, something like that. Because Caleb, Kako, and Nazara was already long gone because they got in their car and they were pulling out at 7:16 in 52 seconds, but that's on the Columbia Bank cameras, and the Columbia Bank cameras are behind 1 minute. Because at first I was like, oh, fuck, this is before the 7:17 call. Then I narrowed it down all the way to figure out that the Columbia Bank camera is behind almost exactly 1 minute. And the phone call at 7:17 from Brian's phone went off at 7:17 and 40 seconds. So it's doable. Yeah, it's amazing. Then, prior to that, the first suspect that they had was Stephen Hartman. Stephen Hartman was staying in a hotel in Bonners Ferry, the Kootenai River Inn. I have all the cameras from the hotel literally him leaving the hotel. They have him all the way on the cameras walking the tunnel. But then they didn't realize that we had him, as much as they showed like they thought this was their suspect, it also shows what time Isaac Funderburg and Stephen Harmon actually cross paths, and they talk. They literally talk on the side of the road. And Stephen Hartman memorializes his through an FBI interview. And Aaliyah Sandlin, as well as Isaac Funderburg, memorialize their encounter through their interview, and it's recorded. And I'm like, and it's also transcribed. And so I break this all down, and I'm able to see Stephen Hartman leaving the hotel, and he's on the camera. It's on the gas station right by Dr. Drake's office at 7:05, walking south. Then he will turn around at the end of the street, and then he does his walk back. He is then on the gas station cameras at 7:34 in 15 seconds. The gas station cameras are after Isaac's apartment, which is right across the street from Dr. Drake's building. And so that would mean that Isaac Funderburg and Stephen Hartman would have had to have talked between 7:31 and 7:32 p.m. Okay? And this is significant because Stephen Hartman gives a description of Isaac, what he was driving, and that his dogs were with him, and that he had a grocery bag with him going into his apartment when they had talked. And then I remembered, wait a second. Isaac said that he drove across the street, tried to find the guy, then came back, then he switched vehicles to then go to the store, and then came back in the white Honda Civic from the store. Well, this is where I catch Isaac Funderburg, and either you're lying or you're mistaken, okay? Because they were driving all over back and forth that day multiple times. But most importantly, I have Stephen Hartman saying that he saw him in his little Volkswagen vehicle, but that he was carrying groceries in. And that would mean that Isaac Funderburg, like I've been saying, that happened earlier, because there was no way in hell you could go over there at 7:27, then drive around back in the area, drive back over, then call the police at 7:29, then go to the grocery store, and that you're going to be back over here to have a conversation at 7:32 with Stephen Hartman. You went to the grocery store earlier. You drove across there earlier. And then on your way back, because you heard the second shot, you drove in the back area and then turned around and then came back over. And that's when you saw Stephen Hartman. You had already went to the store. So all that stuff happened earlier. Then guess what the icing on the cake is? The other eyewitness, God, Aaliyah Sandlin. She tells none other than Bonners Ferry Police Department that night when the shooting happened, as well as that next day she tells Idaho State Police that, oh yeah, Isaac started talking. They're like, was anybody else in the area? Did you see anybody besides that guy that was running? She says, yes, we saw one other person, but he has nothing to do with this, but he was walking on the same side as our apartment. And they're like, well, why do you think he has nothing to do with it? Like they wanted to know why she thought that. And she's like, well, because he walks up like 30 minutes later after the shots. Boom. But guess what, guys? Idaho State Police knew this. And they knew that they caught all of these lies, because guess what they did? So that would mean that when Stephen Hartman talked to Isaac at 7:32, you have Aaliyah Sandlin saying that, yeah, that was 30 minutes after the gunshots. That would put the gunshot at what time? 7:02, wouldn't it? How's that blowing up your fucking story over there, Jen? It's just fucking it all up, isn't it? You weren't on the phone with your fucking husband from 7:17 to 7:26. The window proves it. The eyewitnesses prove it. And then I have a guy by the name of Tim Hand, who was happened to be driving down the street, and he was going to get ice cream, and he's from Canada. And that motherfucker just happened to call in because he had this little Volkswagen shoot out in front of him. And guess what time he says that happened at? 5 minutes to 7. And where was it at? Les Schwab, right there. Now you're probably wondering, like I'm wondering, how do you not catch this if you're a detective? Like you're hearing all of these, like you're interviewing the people. You see that Isaac Funderburg has a total blunder here. Okay. Stephen Hartman's not a suspect at all. He wasn't the guy running, right? And actually, the cameras show what time he would have talked to him. Well, Leslie, little fucking Layman, calls up Isaac Funderburg literally 1 hour. So they interview Isaac again on the 13th and his girlfriend again. Then they detain Stephen Hartman. They interview him 2 hours after they interview and re-interview Isaac and his girlfriend. That they call Isaac Funderburg back up on the phone. Now, you would think you're going to record this conversation, right? No. Leslie Layman says she's not going to record this conversation, but she wants to call him because she wants to get a description of actually the guy that she talked to, because what Stephen Hartman just told the FBI in that interview, it blew up their story when he's like, oh yeah, I ran into a little skinny kid. He had 2 dogs and like a station wagon type thing, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, wait a second, on what side of the road? Wait, what, when? On your way going north or south? He's like, on my way back to the hotel. That's when I saw all the cop cars. And then my head starts thinking, and I'm like, wait, I was like, I want to see when these cops were in the area. And what do I find? Lo and behold, I find 2 sheriff SUVs circling that motherfucker before the gunshots. And I find a Bonners Ferry Charger hiding out in the back alley. Holy shit! During the fucking time of the murder. Wow. Now, it's all on camera. It's all on camera. Someone's going to have to answer this. I don't give a fuck who's going to answer to it, but someone's going to answer to it, because I know I wasn't driving those fucking sheriff SUVs, and I know that I wasn't driving the Charger SUV or the Charger Bonners Ferry car, which actually belonged, I believe, to Marty Ryan, who's the assistant police chief. It was him or Willie Cowell. Willie Cowell is now the chief. Cheers, Willie. I'm coming for that ass. So Leslie Layman decides that she's going to call Isaac Funderburg and ask him some questions. And would you believe this little fucking bitch? What's up, Leslie? You are such a you have no business being a detective. Turn your fucking badge in. You're shit. Here we go. Leslie Layman. My exhibit is Exhibit D, Leslie, because I have all my stuff ready for court. Exhibit D, Leslie. Come on down, hon. Let's talk about. Do you recall you called Isaac Funderburg on 313 1 hour after you interviewed Stephen Hartman? Why'd you do that? And you didn't record the phone call, though, but you recorded all of your other phone calls, right? You said you wanted to ask him some questions, and you said, during my phone call to Isaac Spain, Ireland, Funderburg, I learned the following regarding the description of the walking male. He was 6 foot to 6'2". This is all just you're saying. Blue hoodie with a white or silver vest. Oh, now you're putting the vest on him, right? She's putting the vest that fucking Caleb Kodazar was wearing on this man. Can you fucking believe that? Isaac Funderburg never said that this guy was wearing a vest, meaning Stephen Hartman. Sweatpants or light-colored jeans. Spain asked the male if he had heard the gunshots earlier. The male was not wearing earbuds, might have scruffy facial hair or a beard. Then G and H, and this is what's amazing. G is, Isaac said he had just returned from the store, you dumb bitch. You fucking fucked up when you wrote that. Isaac had just returned from the store and was standing next to his vehicle near his apartment. Well, did it not occur in your little brain that if he's saying that he was at the store, that means he couldn't have heard anything at 7:26 or 7:27, because When the fuck did he go to the store? And this should have been every reason for you to go get that fucking camera, Leslie. Or did you go and get it and did you bury it, you bitch? These people, this is disgusting. Now, age. Isaac estimated the conversation with the male took place 10 to 15 minutes after the gunshots were heard, which would mean he talked to him at 7:32. That would push it when? 7:15, right? But now it's funny because Aaliyah Sandlin said it was 30 minutes. But we're supposed to go off of you, and this isn't recorded. But Aaliyah's, thank God, it is recorded. But how about this? Let's just go get Isaac Funderburg's motherfucking phone records. Did you guys do that? No, you didn't. But guess who is? Moi. Me. But I've already talked to Aaliyah Sandlin, and she said she'd give me whatever the fuck I wanted. You know why? Because she said I never identified Dr. Moore. That's not who we saw. We didn't identify Dr. Moore. But the police told me that I identified Dr. Moore. I said, excuse me? She's like, yeah, on day one. I was like, oh, interesting. Dr. Moore wasn't even a suspect in day one. Isn't that wild? Woo-wee. Liars. Anyways, the best part about it is that guess what Leslie goes, instead of going and get the Super One cameras for the grocery store to check on everybody's stuff. And then you just realize that a 19-year-old was lying to you because he told you, Leslie, in a recorded conversation just a couple hours earlier, that he took that, A, he didn't have his cell phone with him. He took his girlfriend's cell phone, and that he took his girlfriend's car. Well, guess what I tracked down? I tracked down his movements in his car and her car movements. And I have it all timestamped on every time that car was moving. It took me a long fucking time, you stupid cunt, if you would have just done your job. Make me do this shit. But I got it. I got it. So let me ask you a question, Leslie. Why didn't you go and get the grocery store cameras? Same reason that you didn't go get the coffee cameras, and you had to bury those. Well, thank God we have witnesses. They're going to testify that those cameras worked and that they were recording, and that there was recordings from that night. How about that? Multiple witnesses. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is that I pulled Leslie Layman's next 3 reports that she'd write in this investigation. And can you believe the audacity of this woman? You ready to know what she did? She goes over to Mobile gas station and attempts to write in a report that the Mobile gas station cameras, we had gotten to them too late, and they began being recorded over. So she was trying to bury the cameras that would have shown what time Isaac Funderburg and Stephen Hartman were talking. But thank God we're good enough to know that we had other cameras. I have him on the Columbia Bank camera. I have him on the oil change camera. I have him on the Chevron camera. I have Stephen Hartman all up and down. But that piece of shit woman, she attempts to tell in a police report that I have right here that, oh, we went to go get that, but it was being written over. It was already looping the time that we wanted. That stupid bitch didn't realize that a guy by the name of Kelly Jones has a hard drive at his house and had already downloaded it. Boom. He had already turned it over. And then she had to walk it back on the 19th of March. And she says, oh, go see Andy Huddle's report for additional information. And Leslie Layman is none other than a name that's been used in the Idaho 4 case in connection to attempting to collect cameras. Just so you guys know. And in the Idaho 4 case, there's cameras missing. Just so you guys know. Yeah, they should probably put me on that case. So, Lana, what does all this mean? Well, somebody was murdered, right? And Brian Drake wasn't shot through any window through outside going in. I have the body cam. I've showed you guys that. I have police officers that have other body cams that they didn't turn in that we're attempting to get right now. But more importantly, Jennifer Drake gave an interview at 1 a.m. in the morning that it's right now it's Brady material because they never turned it over to the defense, and it's still just miraculously not there. But Jennifer Drake just can't keep her lies straight, but she's really, really good. She's a really good manipulator. Trust me, she worked with somebody to do this. Now it's like, where does Aldora Gatchel come in her brother, right? Because I will tell you this, no doubt about it. Aldora Gatchel and her brother were 100% there when Brian Drake was killed. It's a matter of if they were involved in it or if it happened and they were like, we're going to kill you or shut the fuck up type of thing. But I did some research on my girl, Aldora Gatchel. And I did some research on my girl, Jennifer Drake. Now, let me ask you a question. Why would you ever have to lie about something so stupid like this? If I hang out with you a lot, or even if I hung out with you a little bit, I would know some things about you. Like if you're married, if you have any kids, right? Well, Aldora Gatchel has kids. One of her kids is beautiful. Female. She won some, I don't know what they call beauty pageants or whatever they're called. And her kids aren't like younger, like they're like little kids. Her kids, Aldora's a little bit older. Her kids are older. And when Jennifer Drake was asked about Aldora, Jennifer Drake said that Aldora didn't have any kids. Why would Jennifer Drake lie about Aldora having kids? And her daughter lived in none other than Hayden and Coeur d'Alene. So that's one thing I thought was interesting that I sniffed out, that for whatever reason, Jennifer Drake wants to lie about Aldora having kids. She has a son and a daughter. Her daughter's beautiful. Now, but this is the other part. I don't think people realize, ever since I started doing my podcast on this case, just how many people have reached out and asked for them to not be named, but they had information and they wanted to supply it because they believe that Dr. Moore has nothing to do with this. And when I started pumping out all of this, like the truth, it's woken up the people of Bonner's Ferry. It's woken up the people of, the different counties over there, because that area is so fucking corrupt. That area is like Canton. That area is Norfolk County, Boundary County, Bonner County, and Kootenai County. Just put a big bow on it, and it's literally Norfolk County. It's Canton. Okay. So, so basically the crime scene is blown up. The crime scene isn't the crime scene. It wasn't inside from outside. And that's the only person who's ever said that Brian Drake was shot through the window was Jennifer. Now she's going to have to explain that doesn't match up scientifically. So really, what did your husband tell you? Or were you even talking to him? It's going to look horrible to the jury. Don't you think? How would that, if you were a juror, how do you think that would, if you heard her 911 call, which I could play it if you guys want to hear it again, and then you find out that Brian Drake wasn't shot through any window. How, if you were a juror, what would you think about that? There's some stuff that I will not speak on because I'm not giving Jennifer Drake a heads up on any of it. But let me just say, girl, you've never met a motherfucker like me. I can find anything. And I know all your dirty secrets. Like all of them. Like ones that you don't think I know. Trust me, I know. Think about the money. Think about everything to do with money. I covered my wall with a map of every single move that you've ever made, Jennifer. Let's see. Next up, Heart of the City Church. That's what they were members. I did a bunch of research on Heart of the City Church. And that place is a goddamn fucking shithole. There are more people that are recovering fucking meth addicts, heroin addicts, literally scum of the earth people that belong to this church. And here Jennifer Drake is allowing these little youngins to drive her kids all over the place. And I was just blown away. Like, no offense, but if I'm with the church, that's great. We're going to take you in. We're going to try to help you. But I'll be damned if I'm letting felons drive my motherfucking kid anywhere if I know about it. Like, you know, like these people, you don't know them from Adam. And I don't know, just really weird shit. Really weird shit. So I wanted this to be about an hour. And I dropped you guys some serious bombs. Like serious bombs. Like, look at, these are all the points I wanted to make today. And I told you guys about the CAD notes. There's no cell call, no 911 call, no chain of custody on any of the 911 calls. Like, they just poof came from nowhere. And the 911 call from Kootenai County is somehow recorded and there's no record of it. So guess who would have recorded their own 911 call? Are you seriously telling me that Jennifer Drake recorded her own 911 call? Because I'm going to die. I can't wait for it. I just can't. I'm getting so excited. Jennifer Drake was into scams. Jennifer Drake was into hiding jobs. Jennifer Drake was into hiding money. Jennifer Drake was into hiding bank accounts. The state wants you to believe that Brian Drake was murdered around 7:20 or shot between 7:25 and 7:26 based solely on Jen's statements, hearsay statements. Meanwhile, the evidence would tell you, as well as Jennifer Drake's phone and Brian Drake's phone, that anybody could be on the opposite ends of those. Her phone wasn't used for any 911 call. And in fact, Jen Drake had a burner phone that I found. Brian Drake had a burner phone that I found. Brian Drake, again, had 4 phones on him at the time of his death. What was Brian Drake into? Why were the police following Brian Drake in the spring of 2019? Heart of the City Church, Brian and Jennifer, can you imagine this? They counseled couples in marriage. And here, Brian and Jennifer had the most fucked up marriage you could ever think about. And according to Jennifer, Brian has all these problems. But those two are literally counseling people in marriage. Are you out of your mind? But that's what they did. And that Brian was helping people with porn addiction. I can't wait for this fucking documentary, guys. It's going to be lit. All right. Then you have Brian Drake right before a cigar restaurant / private store / bar in Hayden was raided, and there was a CI on the case as well as undercover Idaho State Police. Brian Drake was Googling on his phone, looking up the cigar shop and looking up, waiting to see and read in the paper, looking for a bust, basically. How would they know about any bust that was going to happen? Because literally days later, this cigar shop would then be raided and for housing illegal gambling and selling liquor. And guess who was a member of this cigar shop? It was owned by a guy by the name of Banducci. Banducci was really good friends with Scott Crawford, who was Brian Drake's motherfucking boss, the chiropractor, that literally said, I'm going to make you pay for this one day for stealing my patients. That's who Jennifer Drake tried to blame this murder on in the beginning. But good old, thank God, Scott Crawford had a goddamn alibi. Okay? But I ask you to go ask yourself, Mr. Banducci, if you're ever going to watch this, do you know who truly ratted you out in getting you popped for your cigar gambling ring and selling alcohol at a private club when you didn't have a liquor license? There was a CI involved in your case. And I have reason to believe that there's evidence that exists in people's phones that could possibly lead to naming who the undercover officers were and who was the CI that tipped them all off to go and do what they did. Why would Brian Drake or his wife be Googling cigar shops right before the raid would come out and make public in the newspaper? That's just wild, isn't it? But who's the biggest vindictive bitch I know? Jennifer Drake. Now, Jennifer Drake at one point worked at a place called Laura Little Theatricals. Now, this is a funny story, and I want to end on something funny because I want to laugh. Jennifer Drake would help this woman, Laura Little, out, and she put on plays, and she put on plays across, and even like Broadway down in New York. Well, Jennifer Drake has a fetish with fucking Craigslist. The woman buys and sells mattresses on Craigslist. I want to vomit in my mouth. Straight vom. You don't buy and sell mattresses on Craigslist, okay? You just don't. But when you do, you should definitely take a double look at this person, okay? So Jennifer was helping out Laura Little and working. And what Jennifer was involved in was the talented actors that they would get to play in these plays. Jennifer was supposed to put these people up in hotels / Airbnbs in like rentals, because the play was going to be performing for like, a month. So like the actors have to have, if they're coming from California or wherever they're coming from, they have to have a place where they stay. You know what I'm talking about? Well, Jennifer Drake was in charge of putting up some of these actors. Okay. And Jennifer Drake is texting with, you guys know, when you go and you answer something, you look something up on Craigslist, right? And then you have a number, so you communicate with them. But when somebody writes you and they have such broken English that you're like, okay, I'm definitely not talking to a guy named Brad Wilson. I'm clearly talking to Habib Shamal, and because he's like, hello, what are you doing today? You know what I mean? Like that. So I'm literally eating popcorn, indulging myself while Jennifer Drake is having this conversation back and forth for however many days. And this guy's like, you have to send this check. Okay. And then we're going to give you, it's an apartment. It's in New York. It's within walking distance of like wherever they're doing the play. And, and so she writes this check from Laura Little Theatrical, like what she's doing. And then this guy writes her back saying, oh, you need to write it out to this person and not to this person. So I need you to send it right now. Can you? And then he wanted like something wire transferred or whatever. And here's Jennifer just like, okay, well, I can resend it, but I can't do it like that. And I'll have to, do this or whatever. And the guy's like, oh my God, our owner is now in the hospital. So you're going to have to write a different name. And Jennifer's just like, it's like, girl, you can't be serious right now, right? Like, that this is a scam, right? Like, but I'm over here trying to wonder, how is she about to get scammed? Because if you're writing me a check and I go to cash it, I mean, you're going to be able to follow that, right? So I'm just laying back. But here, most important part though, is that we like legit have these people that need to stay in they have to have a place to stay because this big production's happening, right? So Jennifer's just not like kind of getting it yet. And then at the tail end, the guy says, oh my God, the owner died. He didn't make it. He died. So he's like, I don't know if the room's going to be ready in time. I have to now do, I got to get somebody down there to clean it up. Do you think that you could pay us for the next month all at once so we can make it all nice for you. And I'm over here reading this shit and I'm like, the fuck is going to happen here? Then Jennifer finally says, hey, I hope you're not scamming me. I hope you're not scamming me because I'm really putting my trust in you. And like, this is for my job or whatever, blah, blah. Well, don't you think that you would start maybe like making other arrangements? And this guy's like, oh my God, no. Da-da-da. Then he starts asking for pictures and Jennifer does nothing. Jennifer does nothing. The guys get to New York, have literally nowhere to go because it was a scam. Okay. And then Jennifer starts saying, oh my God, Debbie, I need you to help me start sleuthing and figuring out who this guy is. I'm going to kill this guy. All right. And then I finally got to see Jennifer like getting all like, I'm going to kill this guy. I'm thinking, yeah, I bet you are. Like that guy better run. Well, no shit. She has to call Laura Little and explain how she just got fucking scammed, but it was like so obvious. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I think she wants to fuck this up. Like, I think in a secret way, like she kind of wants to like fuck shit up. So she tells Laura Little that, I can't believe this. And then she's like, I'm sorry, I can't even help right now. Like, I got to go take care of something else. She leaves this Laura Little woman in New York to fend for herself with these actors to find them like a place to stay. This Laura Little girl ends up like tossing out buco bucks to put these motherfuckers up at the Sheraton at like $350 a night. And here they were supposed to pay like $2,000 for like the month. And you would know that nobody is renting out a place in New York City for $2,000 for the month. Jennifer, what the fuck? Okay. But I truly believe that she did it on purpose because nobody's that dumb. I literally think she was trying to fuck this all up for this woman on purpose. And I know probably Jennifer Drake's watching right now and she's probably like, how the fuck does Lana know anything about this? But I'm over here thinking, God, how the fuck are you this dumb? And she's probably like, see, I couldn't put a murder together. I'm that stupid. No, that's why you're that. I think that you did it on purpose, Jennifer. But you said something that I couldn't believe that you said. You said the word sleuthing. Not too many people use the word sleuthing, especially if you're not involved with true crime. You don't usually hear people say the word sleuth. And she asked her friend, she's like, yeah, I'm gonna go start. I'm gonna do some sleuthing. When I saw those words, I said to myself, holy shit. Okay, those are some words. You're not saying the word sleuth. Like that. She literally had Brian Drake on a goddamn leash. She had him fucking monitoring with 360 Life. Then she got fucking cameras at her house. Would you think that the cops would go get these cameras at her house? Nope. So it's interesting that she used the word sleuth because she was sleuthing her husband 24/7. Shit, she was monitoring. She was stalking her husband. And let me ask you a question. Why would Brian Drake disable his Life 360 only when he would go to Bonner's Ferry? Who's the only people that follow you on Life 360? Your family. Okay? Those are the only people that follow you on Life 360. So I can prove that Brian Drake was hiding his locations from who? From who? Not from the police, not from Aldora Gatchel, not from a patient. He was hiding his locations when he was in Bonner's Ferry from one person only. Well, if you want to include, I guess, the whole family if they were on a plan. But he was hiding it from his wife. And then where is Brian Drake murdered at? He's murdered in Bonner's Ferry. And all of this shit is going to add up. I mean, and I'm only touching 1/10 of it. So you can ask yourselves, is Idaho State Police corrupt, inept, or both? And was this a murder for hire? But Jennifer Drake wanted to get into the business of, what do you call it? Storage units. She wanted to get into the business of storage units. She was looking at storage units and literally wanting to get in business with that. Guess what Marty Ryan did on the side from being a cop? He owns storage units. Isn't that fucking wild? God, you just can't make this shit up. One day we're going to talk about all the money that was coming into Jennifer Drake's account right before the murder of her husband. You know it costs money to put a hit on your man, right? And everybody would look at Brian Drake and Jennifer Drake and be like, dude, they're fucking dirt. They have no money. Well, follow the money, honey. And that's for the next time. But Jennifer Drake, a bad bitch, man. Woo! Steer clear of that woman. Steer clear of that woman, man. She's the type of woman that would rent out her house and make her kids sleep on the floor of a friend's house so they can make money. That's the type of woman Jennifer is. Hey, go stay at your friend's house. Hey, go stay at grandma's. We got to rent out our house. What the fuck? Who Airbnbs their own fucking house? Like the one that they live in. Tell me you're not serious. Oh, I'm serious. Who found that shit? Chef's kiss. She wild. You need to go stay with a friend. You need to go stay with grandma. And me and Brian are going to stay in that fucking office up in Bonner's Ferry and pull that couch out. And we're just going to rent our house out. Meanwhile, all your kids' shit is all in that house. And people, when they come over, they go to your refrigerator and it's all your condiments that y'all are using. What do you do with your food? What the fuck is going on? But Jennifer Drake, how many times you Airbnb out your house before your husband was murdered? Where'd that money go? You a liar. And that's just the tip of the iceberg that I found on your ass. Woo! All right, guys, much love. Brian Drake was murdered. Dr. Moore didn't do it. And Jennifer Drake is a goddamn liar. Peace out, Girl Scouts.